The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tracy Nyer, and I'm with the Virginia SBDC. I'll be your facilitator for today's webinar. For those of you who are not familiar, the Virginia SBDC is the largest and most effective provider of customized counseling and education for small businesses of Virginia. Most of our services are offered locally in 28 locations throughout the Commonwealth. Today's webinar is one of our educational offerings and is part of our ongoing webinar series, Google and Beyond, Marketing and Managing on the Web. Today's topic is Small Business Cyber Resilience, the Basics of Cybersecurity for Small Business. All of our Google and Beyond webinars are presented by Ray Sidney Smith, a web and mobile strategist, author of Solo Mo Success, Social Media, Local and Web Small Business Marketing Strategy Explained, and president of W3 Consulting. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type those questions into the question window and Ray will do his best to answer them. Without further ado, here's Ray Sidney Smith.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you to the Virginia SBDC for having me here on the webinar series. As Tracy said, please ask your questions now. If you have them, I'll be happy to either answer the question, or if I have to, I can defer those to email and we can have an email exchange and I can get you resources. If you have questions afterward, feel free to tweet at me. I'm always on the Twitter, and go ahead and tweet at W3 Consulting, hashtag it Beyond Google, and I'll know that it's about one of these webinars, and I will have my email address on the final slide. So if you are not on Twitter, feel free to email me and I'll be happy to try to direct you to a resource if I don't have an answer myself. And follow at Virginia SBDC. Their Twitter profile puts out new information and resources regarding their programs and others that are useful to you throughout the Commonwealth. So with that, let's talk about our agenda today. Today's topic is a scary one, but a manageable one, and I'm hoping that through the next hour, we'll be able to cover quite a number of the things that you need to do as a small business owner regarding cybersecurity, or what I've heard colloquially termed cyber resilience. And first, I want to talk a little bit about what cybersecurity is and why hackers even do this stuff, because it's really important for you to understand that the intention of these bad actors are important for you to understand on the other side, so that you can be resilient against them. Prevention is the key here. I want to talk about some of the elements of cyber resilience, and talking about the three elements, which I'll cover shortly, and then in the various domains in which digital identity and data and so on and so forth are required for us to be able to be attentive. Then I'll talk about some of the tools, just a smattering of various cybersecurity tools that I use, have come across, and recommend to clients on a regular basis. They're in no particular order, but I think they're all useful to use and either low cost or free. So it really helps to have these implemented on all of your systems. All right, so let's talk about, and then I'll leave a little time for Q&A, right? So we'll have Q&A after that. And so let's get into it. So cybersecurity, cybercrime, as the term is used, is the wide variety of crimes, unethical tactics, and really just immoral, practices of both individuals, companies, and state actors, that is, governments of a foreign nature, that are attempting to work against your personal and or business systems. So these individuals, companies, state actors are what we could bundle under the term hackers, okay? And these hackers are attempting to infiltrate your cybersecurity. And the SBA has a really good definition of what cybersecurity is, so I'm going to go over that now so that you have an understanding about what we're really talking about. So cybersecurity is, as the SBA says, the comprehensive effort to protect computers, programs, networks, and data from these three things, right? Attack, damage, and then access that's not been authorized by you through various technologies, processes, and best practices. Okay, so what we're going to really talk about is that sense of making sure that we can keep privacy, data integrity, and security primary in the business owner's perspective as we go throughout our work lives. Okay, so cybersecurity is what we're really dealing with, and what hackers are doing is they're attempting to compromise your cybersecurity for a number of different reasons. And first and foremost, they're really after passwords. I mean, they want to access your passwords in some way, shape, or form, and that's really to gain access for broader purposes. So I'm generalizing here, and I will generalize a lot throughout this time together today because there's just no ability for me to spend a lot of time getting in the weeds with a lot of this stuff. But you can kind of think about it from this perspective. They're trying to gain your login information so that they can do more improper, immoral, unethical, and illegal practices, illegal things. Okay? They want to gain access to financial accounts. In essence, hackers are in this primarily for the money, especially when it comes to small business owners. They can take a lot of money by infiltrating many small business owners. So, last week, Reddit announced that they had been hacked, and all of the user accounts going back to 2007 had, their email addresses and passwords had been compromised in some way, shape, or form, and they were telling everyone to, initiate a password reset and updating their systems across all of the accounts on the internet they might have that ever use that password, right? That is because they were using an insecure form of two-factor authentication, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And ultimately, why did those hackers go after those accounts? Well, it's easy. People have email addresses and passwords. They use the same email addresses and passwords across many different accounts, including their bank accounts. And therefore, guess what? If they get access to Reddit's username and password you have for them, it's likely that among the millions and millions of people, they will find people who have bank accounts with Bank of America and Wells Fargo and whomever that also have the same password. And then they get access to those financial accounts. Maybe they're your business accounts, or maybe they're your email account, which then gives them access to your business accounts. And voila, they now get to steal money. Next up is to gain access to your client's data. I was actually talking to Tracy before we started recording, and unfortunately in the last 6 months, I've had 2 client businesses that have come before they ever came into contact with me. If they had come into contact with me, I would have told them to do something different, obviously, but they came to me in peril because their businesses basically shut down because they had their clients' data compromised. And in their particular industries, that's a big no-no. And unfortunately, there was nothing more that could be done other than now mitigation of the risk that was already of the damage that was already done. So really, when I talk about prevention is necessary here, prevention is not only the first and last line of defense for you. In most cases, you must defend against this, if not for yourself, if for all the data you are collecting about the people that you serve. And then next up, hackers want to be able to establish beachheads so that they can use your system to propagate and infect other systems. So in essence, what we do is, as a business owner, is we have systems that look out to the world and communicate information. That might be our website. We have a website that we publish on a server, with our web hosting company, and that information communicates out to the world. And we have routers in our offices and our retail locations, and that information may be giving free Wi-Fi access to our customers that show up to our office or retail location, or we have an office where we are providing internal internet access and network access to our employees and staff. Well, if a hacker can get in to one of those locations, then they can put software on your system that then starts to communicate out to the rest of the world. Maybe everyone who visits your website now gets infected because they were able to establish a beachhead on your web hosting account and now infect the people who visit. Or start pinging what we call pinging is looking for, searching for other networks and other compromised places where they can go ahead and infect and then spread the viruses. Okay, so the beachhead propagation is actually a really big problem, and the FBI most recently was talking about this. They were sending out notices to as many small business owners as possible, and the reality was that they were infecting routers, and the routers were then helping to propagate more and more malware. Okay, so one of the main functions of the malware was to find routers that could be compromised, infect them, and then spread the virus. And then once it was all set up, then it was able to then do the dirty work, right? Infecting the computers with whatever it wanted to do, which was in this case either mine cryptocurrency or steal data, do ransomware attacks, and that kind of thing. So this is what the hackers are trying to do. This is what's in it for them. The more they can capture data, the more they can redirect data, the more they can make money. Okay. It's all about making money for them. They generally don't care about much else. Maybe there's a small percentage that wants to get access to maybe a high profile client. Perhaps if you're high profile, they want to be able to attack you by getting ransomware and so on and so forth. But that's also in the furtherance of making money. I think I read or heard last week that the latest payout for a ransomware attack was $64,000. Okay, this was an infiltration of a system. They captured data that was obviously important enough for a company to want back, and the company had to pay $64,000 to be able to get back data access. So if you want to think about the value of cybersecurity, think about $64,000. It's the $64,000 question if you want to think about it that way, right? This is really important for everybody to pay attention to. And here we go. Let's talk about what we can do to really establish data security, cybersecurity, in a way that is both practical, affordable, and reasonable both on you and your staff. So one thing we want to do is to kind of understand the panoply of attack types. And I've written a blog post about this, and I'll send this along to Tracy to send along to you. And I'll actually create a PDF of the slides, so you don't have to worry too much. I'll provide a copy of this as a PDF, and Tracy can get that out to you. But there are a lot of different attack types, and I just want to throw them out here so you have an idea about them. But don't get bogged down on trying to understand all of these. Just understand that they exist. Okay, so some of the first kinds and the primary kinds that we'll talk about are hacking of your digital devices and digital services. In essence, you can think about this as your devices as being smartphones, computers, and laptops, your point of sale terminal. So if you're taking credit card payment or cash payment through a digital device in your retail location, that is also an attack vector. Basically, an attack vector is a location that wants to be that is able to be attacked by a hacker. Credit card machines, you can think of ATMs, and any other similar device. In essence, if it has if it has an onboard, it has a motherboard, if it has the ability to think, independently, then it is vulnerable to hacking. Okay, digital services. So in digital service lingo, we talk about websites, email, cloud storage, any type of online services. Okay, one thing that people don't frequently think about is physical theft, larceny. So, there's a hard drive that you're backing up your system to in your office with your computer sitting there. Well, someone breaks into it, or just happens to walk into your office and you don't have it locked, and walks away with your computer and hard drive, and those were the only backups, primary backup and primary device with your data on it. It's gone. Right, and now you have to hope that law enforcement can resecure that from the thief. But is that really possible on all cases? No. There's data theft. There's phishing attacks, and phishing attacks is one of the biggest problems. This is where someone actually pretends in some way, shape, or form, or uses social behavioral interventions to schemes to be able to get you to give up data about yourself. And then using that data, they're then able to go ahead and attack you. Then there's stalking, there's identity theft, there's wiretapping, distributed denial of service attacks or DOS attacks, email bombing. All of those things are bombarding your systems, whether that be your website or servers or your email servers, so that it can stop legitimate traffic by bombarding it with faux traffic. Then there's malware, which is just general bad stuff. Ransomware, which is the idea of encrypting your data against your will, so involuntarily encrypting your data, and then asking you to pay money, which was the $64,000 payout that I just talked about. So ransomware is this idea that they can take your data, you don't have another backup of it, so now you have to pay them in order to get access to it. And then the newest form of really a type of malware, is crypto mining. And this is where cryptocurrency or Bitcoin and any of the other cryptocurrencies, the bad guys out there are in essence injecting into your web browser a little bit of code that then runs a mining tool. And mining tool means it generates cryptocurrency. And so it's out there generating cryptocurrency. And if you infect, hundreds, thousands, perhaps millions of computers or routers that are mining cryptocurrency, you can make a pretty good dollar. And so your system then slows down. Potentially, it does other bad things like helping infect other computers, and it's making money for the hacker. Okay, so again, these are just a few of the various attack types, but you do need to recognize that there are many different ways in which your system can be infiltrated, and you need to take measures, both physical protection measures. How do you check in and out laptops and devices and other kinds of things that are accessing the network, but also then how you're protecting it from a digital perspective. Okay, so let's talk about the elements of cyber resilience. Cyber resilience is the ability to prevent across the board the attacks that come at you from the various things that we just talked about, right? The attack types, right? We want to talk about these things in three big umbrellas. Now, they bleed across one another quite often, and so I just lumped these together as best as I could. But just so you have an idea, there's three general categories. Privacy, which is the idea of keeping your information, personal, business, your employees' information, vendors, and your client information, the data you're collecting from all of these other parties, secure. Then we have data integrity. I tend to think of data integrity as the handshake, hence the image, but it's the idea of the transference of data. When I send you something, if I email Tracy, for example, I want Tracy to have confidence that not only what I send her, but that I am who I say I am when I send her that data, and that the data I have is actually the data I have. I don't want to have a file name that is Raymond's photograph.jpg, but when someone opens it up, it's really some kind of malware. So data integrity is the idea that we want to make sure that the transference of data as well as the data itself are what they say they are, and we can legitimize and authenticate that transfer. Okay, and then security. Security is just the ability to keep the walls up, right? Keep the perimeter safe, so that things that are attempting to attack are not getting in. And then when they do get in, how do we get them out as quickly as possible? So the question I use, and that I feel like you should all use, is how would I operate today if I knew I was just attacked? And this is really important to think about, because it's not about keeping you anxious and on alert at all times of the day. It's for you to be vigilant every day about the fact that at any time you can be attacked, and you need to have safeguards and measures in place, both by yourself and anyone that you're working with, so that you can jump into action. And then, of course, you should have tools in place that are consistently monitoring and managing your safety as you make your way throughout the day. But it does take due diligence, and it takes vigilance. You need to be on to be cyber resilient. You need to be aware that, honestly, at any moment in time, you can be attacked. And so does that mean you stand around biting your nails? No, do something about it. Have a good vigilance practice about it, and then you're prepared to prevent it from happening, because prevention is really 99% of the game here. I'm going to keep saying it throughout the hour, but it's really important that you understand that you need to prevent this stuff, because most likely if it happens to you, then it's going to be catastrophic, right? And that catastrophic loss is not a pleasant conversation that you're going to have with me or somebody else when that does happen. So let's get into this. Let's talk about websites first and website privacy. So I'm going to go website privacy, website data integrity, website security, and down the various elements. So we're going to talk about these in that flow. All right, so first and foremost, let's talk about websites. And one thing that is frequently missing from websites are privacy policies, terms of service if you're providing any services, whether that be user accounts or any other kinds of forms, anything that you're doing on the website. If you're collecting data, transiting data, doing a service for someone on your website, you should have a term of service and the terms of service, and a cookie policy. If you are downloading and installing cookies within the web browser of people who are visiting you, you should probably display a cookie policy. These are all easy to do. It takes a little bit of time. There are policy generators, which I'll talk about later, and you should have them. So have a privacy policy, have at least a terms of service if you're doing any types of data collection, data transiting. If your website is doing something for someone in some way, shape, or form, or if you're providing a service through your website, you should have a term of service. And then a cookie policy. If you're installing cookies, cookies are temporary files that sit in your web browser, and they are time-based usually. And what they do is they're collecting information about that person and their interaction with their web browser, so that you can perform analysis, collecting data, do analysis, and also provide other services. So for example, if you have Google Analytics installed on your website, well, your website is then collecting data about the people who are visiting your website. And so in your privacy policy, you should have a cookie policy that says, hey, by the way, we're collecting this data, and this is how long we keep the data, this is what we do with the data, and so on and so forth. Okay. Next up is probably fairly, what do you call it? It's not common, but GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulation that came into effect on May 25th, 2018, it may be controversial was the word I was looking for. This may sound controversial, but I think that most businesses in the United States should start to comply voluntarily with GDPR. Now, GDPR covers EU citizens, so that is citizens of the European Union and the UK, who are accessing websites like yours. Now, in reality, the EU doesn't have jurisdiction to be coming after you necessarily. Are they likely to come after you? No. But to comply with GDPR means that you're doing a whole bunch of data security things that are probably good for you anyway. Just as an example, keeping user accounts indefinitely. Or, why would you keep data that you don't need about someone that could potentially compromise them or you at some point in the future for no reason? So GDPR says if you don't need that data, get rid of it, delete it. And so it's a matter of going through the GDPR requirements and seeing what things you can comply with and what things you couldn't. Okay, that is beyond the purview of today's discussion. GDPR could be its own webinar by itself. But the idea is to look through the GDPR regulations, the requirements for compliance, and see what works for you. And then you can implement those on your website. There are plugins that help you do that. There are tools, and there's lots of resources out there for it, but I look into GDPR compliance. Okay, data integrity. So again, like I said, data integrity is that handshake. What information am I passing to you, and is it me that is passing it to you? So first and foremost is the SSL certificate. And this is really important for people to kind of understand what the SSL certificate is. So I thought I'd pop out and show you. So the idea of TLS, or the transport, I think it's transport location security, but the idea here is that the secure socket layer certificate on your domain, that is yourbusinessname.com, is the thing that secures the transit of information, the communication of information between your web hosting account, where you have your website, and the end user, the person who downloads the information in their web browser. And that means that no one can infiltrate the communication between the two, so that of course requires your website not to be already hacked, and therefore it wouldn't matter if the information was encrypted, because then it's just encrypted malware. It's not stopping anything. But the SSL certificate, in essence, is saying the information I'm communicating to you is verified and is coming down to the end user, and that means the end user now can have certainty that they're connected to you proper as opposed to some malware hacker. Okay, and so this is really important, and there's even a benefit to this now because Google is saying if you do this, then we'll give you a little bit more search engine mojo. Right? They're saying you get a little bit more SEO mojo if you have SSL enabled. Okay, so I wanted to show you this so you can kind of have an idea of what this looks like. But in essence, if I go, wait a second, if I go here, you can see here that Chrome, as of I believe Chrome 68, is now showing a not secure for websites that are not displaying the SSL certificate. Okay, so I turn this off so you could see what this looks like. And as you can see now, your website, if it doesn't have SSL, Chrome, which is the most widely used browser in the world right now, says you should not enter any sensitive information on the site, for example, passwords or credit cards, because it could be stolen by attackers. Okay, and you can learn more. It tells you how many cookies are in use and some other information. Okay, but it's going to be less likely someone's going to want to browse your website and or buy from you if they feel they're on a not secure website. Okay, and so you can see the difference here in the secure. So this one says secure, shows a little green symbol lock icon. It says the connection is secure. Your information is private when it is sent to this site. Okay, and now I'm going to turn it back on. So bear with me a moment because I don't want it sitting around not on. Let's go here to crypto, and then we're going to turn HTTPS on. I'm going to come back to this tool in a little bit, and you can see what that's all about. But I did want to point out that once you do that, so you can see now that I turned on the HTTPS, the secure. Now the W3 Consulting's website shows secure, which is good, right? So now the data transiting back and forth is secure, and so now it matches our other subdomains and everything else. This is great, okay? However, for search engine purposes, now Google is tracking data against HTTP as opposed to HTTPS. So just make sure that when you do change from non-secure to secure, that you go into Google Analytics and any other services like that and make sure that you update that. And you do that here. So here, if you go to analytics.google.com, right, you'll be taken into your dashboard, click on the admin icon in the bottom left-hand corner, the gear icon, and then you'll be taken over to the admin section, and I can take you out of here just so you can see. So you'll be taken to this screen. You're going to click on property sections, right? Here goes HTTP www.w3cinc.com. Click on property settings, and then you'll be able to change from HTTP to HTTPS. That really doesn't matter here, by the way. It's this default URL. We're going to change this to HTTPS. So now Google will track the the secure traffic that's transiting the site, and then we click save. Okay, because otherwise Google won't know that you're tracking HTTP versus HTTPS. You'll see the little success here, and voila, now you have access to tracking on the SSL encrypted side of this. And so we'll go back here because I'm going to come back to this later. All right, great. And where were we? We were at encrypting. Voila. Okay, so we talked about SSL certificates. So SSL certificates are important. Get it set up. Next is if you're collecting any data for payment purposes, then you should make sure that you are PCI compliant. PCI DSS is the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards. This link here is to a compliance guide that you can look at later. And the idea here is that if you are taking payments on your website, you need to make sure that you are PCI compliant. Now, the easiest way to be PCI compliant is to use a payment processing solution that already is PCI compliant. So that means if you're using PayPal or Shopify or any of those other services that are long-standing payment portals, you're going to be fine. But if you, for some reason, are using some smaller service that is somehow taking payment, for example, there are many scheduling tools where it allows you to book on this tool. So you select a time in the calendar, and before the client or the potential client can secure a time, they have to pay maybe a deposit, or for the service that you're providing. Maybe if you're a hairstylist, or even if you're a lawyer or an accountant, you're doing an initial consultation for a fee. You can do that kind of stuff. Well, make sure that they are PCI compliant, not because of any regulation. I mean, you're supposed to be PCI compliant, but that's not the issue. The issue is that for data security purposes, now all of a sudden, if they're not PCI compliant, now your website and the payment portal is transiting data insecurely about not just your client, but you. And so then both pieces of information are compromised. So just make sure you're PCI compliant on that side. Okay, next up on the website security side, this gets a little technical, but I'm not going to try and get in the weeds here. I just want to cover some of the big ticket items. Okay, first and foremost, if you are using a website builder of some kind, that is WordPress, you name it, Drupal, Joomla, many other of the website content management systems, as they're called, there is the ability for you to then put documents outside of the website builder, right? So if you have WordPress, it's installed in a folder in your web host. And so what I see business owners do is they want to transfer a fairly large file. And this happened sort of back in the day when Dropbox and Google Drive and Box and those other services weren't in existence. But I still see this happening. You want to send a large file to a client, or you want to send a large file to someplace else. And so you upload it via FTP or otherwise to your web host. And so now you have these files that are sitting outside of your website's database. And because of that, you are creating a security risk, because now you have data that is sitting outside of the secured wall of the web application firewall that I'll talk about in a bit, and you are potentially creating a greater risk, and certainly an attack vector, because now I can look at that file and potentially change that file in some way, shape, or form, so that when someone downloads it, it's not the file that they thought it was. So that goes back to data integrity. Am I downloading from the person I trust the data that they are actually trying to send me? Next up is having scanning software, firewall, and certainly any web application firewalls available to you. So what this means is that you should have it's kind of like antivirus software, right? Something that is looking at your website and making sure that it is staying secure. Next up is to have a firewall, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this shortly. The tool I was showing you not analytics, but the other tool I was showing you, Cloudflare, I'm going to show you this at the end of the webinar, and I'll show you how the web application firewall, as well as setting up the firewall, actually works. And but you should have certainly some kind of website security scanning software. You should have a firewall in place, and you should have a web application firewall if you are running a content management system like WordPress, Drupal, Joomla, or otherwise. Finally, block known countries that, if you do business in a 5-mile radius, which is 90% of business or something, or some large percentages of you all do business within a 5-mile radius. Now the world is getting global, right? We're doing more business with people overseas and everywhere. But there are some really known bad actors that we get frequent and many cyber attacks from, and so you can go out there and block them, and this is how you do it. So I'm actually going to go over to this to this just so you can see it. But if we go over to, this is Cloudflare. Cloudflare is best known as a content distribution network, meaning that they allow you to speed up your website by putting your files in many different places. These are files that people regularly are downloading, and so therefore, since if I'm in Dallas, Texas, and I'm trying to download your website, access your website, well, Cloudflare would have the servers closest to Dallas send me those files, as opposed to me trying to go to your web host, which may be located in New York or wherever, right? So it's going to try and direct the closest traffic to me to speed up the site for the end user. So if we look at this in the last 24 hours, we've had 4,800 visits to the website in some way, shape, or form. And what we can do, though, is we can go down here to geography, and we can see that the top threats from countries, 2 of those threats came from the US. They happen to be just bad browsers, unupdated browsers, and so the system blocked them. But you can see that top traffic countries: United States, Germany, China, France, and Canada. Okay, so we can see where most of our traffic is coming from. Predominantly, we're getting US traffic. Okay, all wonderful. This is what it should look like. Okay, you can see that even Bing is crawling our website more than Google. That could be useful. We still get much more of our traffic from Google anyway, so that Bing is crawling it with bots doesn't really make much a difference. But if I go over to Access, I can now scroll down. Oh, maybe it's not Access. I thought, oh no, I'm sorry. It's Page Rules, I think. Let's see, Page Rules. No, it's not Page Rules. Okay, bear with me a moment here. I thought it was Page Rules. Traffic. It's not traffic. I had just found it. It should be Page Rules. I don't know why it's not Page Rules. Workers, caching. No, not caching. No. Let's find this. Let's see here. Either Page Rules is not displaying properly for me or something, but I could swear that it was Page Rules. Traffic. Let's see here. If we go back to Overview, then we go back to Analytics, we can see. Well, I don't want to waste time here. In essence, what I did was I went into the I looked at the top threat countries when we first established the website, and it came from various types of locations. And so then I went into I could have swore that it was, oh, here it is. I'm sorry. So it's under Firewall. So under the Firewall, which I'll show you a little bit later, you can see that I've created some access rules, right? And so under the access rules, I've just basically said, Ukraine was sending me a whole bunch of, malware traffic, and we were blocking it. A bunch of China was doing it as well, and so was Russia. So we just blocked them. And in this case, we provide a challenge so that if somebody is attempting to come to the website, they have to overcome that challenge in order to come into the site. Do I care about China, Russia, or Ukrainian traffic? No. So in essence, I'm now blocking 99% of the potential malware that's coming to and from those particular countries. If I start seeing, I think one of these is Moldova, and another one is another one from the Eastern Bloc. But I just started seeing these, issues coming up, and some was legitimate traffic, some was not. And so you can go in here and you can block those particular ranges. You can just type in a country, right? You can say, oh, you know what? There goes the Republic of Moldova. I want you to challenge the person so that if anything comes up, now Moldova will be blocked. Nothing against the people of Moldova, but the reality is that you can do that here with a CDN in order to be able to further protect yourself. Okay, so just think about ways in which you can do this using readily available tools. And Cloudflare has it's a free program, so you can use the free version to do exactly what I was just doing. Okay, so block known countries with rampant web attacks, and you do that by enabling something like Cloudflare. Monitor the traffic over a couple of weeks, over probably just a couple of weeks' time. You'll see where the attacks are coming from, and no surprise, it's probably North Korea, China, and Russia. And you could just go out there and select those access rules. I haven't actually added North Korea. I should probably do that to the W3C Inc. website. But as you can see, not very much traffic is coming from them. But you block them and you call it a day. You can block them, or you can challenge them so that legitimate traffic can come through, which is what I've done. And then if there's illegitimate traffic, they're not going to be able to pass the challenge, because it's all automated bots trying to do bad things. Okay. Moving on, network security. Network security is, in essence, the all of the devices that sit out in front of the public that connects your either computer devices or your mobile devices, that'd be laptops or computers, servers, and mobile devices like tablets and phones, smartphones and otherwise, to each other, okay, and to the internet. So from a privacy perspective, we want to make sure you have a firewall active, okay? And a firewall just basically blocks content that shouldn't be coming in or out, okay? So that's what a firewall does. So you want to make sure that you have a firewall active. And the firewall just goes out there and says, hey, it's consistently monitoring for unauthorized access to the system and known types of bad actors, of hackers, and it goes ahead and blocks them. So that's just an easy thing. If your routers, modems have a firewall available, enable them, activate those, okay? Next is if you have anyone connecting to your Wi-Fi at your office, at your home, at your retail location that is not a staff member, then you should create a guest network. Most routers allow the creation of a guest network now, where it's creating a separate Wi-Fi access that gives them internet access, but is not giving them localized access to your files, to your software and systems. Okay, so create a guest network. Data integrity. This is a kind of a pet peeve of mine, but I see remote access, the RDP, remote desktop protocol, or otherwise, turned on routers, and so you will. I don't know why, but you don't need access to your router remotely from wherever you are. And it only creates a larger attack surface. So unless you really, really need access to your router, modems, hubs from a remote perspective, say that if you have many retail locations or many office locations, and for some reason you need to be able to access it for some reason, okay. But you should need to be able to make a very strong argument for it, and even then, I would say that you're increasing your risk of hacking by having remote access turned on to routers, hubs, modems, and so forth. Okay, so if you don't need it, in essence, turn it off. Okay, and you can log into, typically it's like 192.168.1.1 or .1.0 or something like that. You then are taken into the router administrative dashboard, and you can see all of the security options and all of the other options. And one of them is going to probably be remote access. Turn it off. Okay, security. Update your router and modem to the latest version of firmware. One of the biggest problems with cyber attacks today is that your routers are outdated. They have security risks. They have holes that will come up over time. People find these academics who are studying cybersecurity. They find these various compromises within the software. There's a bug in the software here that can be compromised, blah, blah, blah. And so they publish these papers, and guess what the hackers do? They read those papers from the academics and they say, ooh, how can I get into this router or modem and use that as a beachhead for propagating malware? Or how can I access the systems and then get a ransomware software on the CEO's laptop? Well, the routers and the modems are the way that they access them. So it's not that typically it's not that Belkin or IBM, I'm sorry, not IBM, but all of the big router manufacturers, Netgear was who I was thinking of, Netgear and Belkin and so on and so forth, they're putting out the patches for the routers, but they're manual updates. So you need to go into that dashboard and click update your firmware so that you have the latest one running, and then they're patched and you're good to go. Make sure that you turn off everything you don't need in the router, but what the services you do need, which frequently is just Wi-Fi access and network routing. That's it. That's all you need in the router. That's what it's built for. Don't have it do a whole bunch of other things. You shouldn't be storing data or anything else like that on your routers or modems. Next, and this is going to be an ongoing theme for the rest of today, you need strong passwords. That means long random strings. That does not mean your daughter's first name and your 4-digit pin to the ATM. These should be long random strings. There are programs that produce this. If you go to random.org/passwords, it produces long random strings. You need to have strong passwords. Strong passwords, for example, in routers, is one of the only defenses against a new issue with almost all routers, I believe, that use the WPA2, which is the current specifications for security on Wi-Fi's through the Wi-Fi Alliance. And WPA3 is coming out, but who knows when people will adopt that widely. So right now we're stuck with WPA2 for maybe 5, 10, 20 years. I don't know how long it's going to be. But the reality is that you're in real trouble if you have the a poor password. So you need a really long password so that you are capable of defending against these people who are brute force attacking your stuff. Okay, next up are computers. And let's run through these pretty quickly. These are pretty simple. Okay, again, use strong passwords. Enforce a strong password policy. So in many of the user system user accounts, you can go ahead and say, this user can't do this without, bear with me a moment here. Users can't log into the system without having a strong password. If they put in a 4-digit password, it's going to say, sorry, you need to rename your password. You have to reestablish your password with a strong password policy, and that password needs to be updated, say every 6 months, every 3 months, every 9 months, whatever you decide is comfortable for the people in your company. Okay. Data integrity for computers. This is a very easy one. You need to back up all your data to protect against ransomware, and this needs to be done on a regular basis. And we did a whole webinar on backing up data. So if you go to the Virginia SBDC website, there under live webinars and recordings, scroll down, and then in the drop-down list in the embedded webinar archives, you'll see the one on backing up your business data on the web. Okay, and then it'll walk you through all the various places where you have data and the various ways in which you can back that data up. But you have to have data backups, because when someone goes ahead and attacks you with ransomware and they lock up your entire system with all of your data on it, you need to be able to say, keep it. It's worthless because I have backups and I can just reinstall all of this, and I'm not paying you $64,000 to regain access to my business data. Okay. Also, keep all your software, operating systems, and drivers updated. That includes not just your computers and laptops, that includes your printers, if you scanners, fax machines. Remember, they all have they can all do logic, right? They have circuit boards that are doing logic, and that also includes if you have Philips Hue bulbs, the ones that are these IoT Internet of Things devices. If you have connected the Nest thermostat, if you have any other connected devices, security cameras that are connected to your Wi-Fi, all of them need to be updated on a regular basis. Create a plan, either create a schedule, say every 3 months, you're going to go around, make a list of all of them, and they all need to be updated on a regular basis. If you have software like Microsoft Office, or if you're using any other industry-specific, bespoke, custom software, make sure it's getting updated and that the bug patches are being put onto them so that these kinds of security risks are being put to rest on a regular. So again, this is about vigilance and prevention. And next up, use HTTPS whenever you're browsing. Okay, so that means when you type in a browser website address, you type in HTTPS : and I know people are not used to typing in www dot or https dot :// but if you want to protect yourself for very important sites like your banking accounts, if you use an online accounting system like Intuit's QuickBooks or Wave or Zero Accounting, type in the HTTPS, or you can use a browser plugin, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, that actually forces all website traffic to HTTPS. Okay, so do that on all computers, for all of your staff, for everything that you communicate with. All right, security. Enforce two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication on all computers. This is really important because this is how Reddit was hacked, right? Because they used SMS, which is an insecure form of it, but we want to have a second factor or more factors when we are required to log into our computers. What that means is that if I go to log into this computer, for example, I'm going to get prompted on my phone to give me access to, say, my Gmail account or to my calendar or whatever. It's going to prompt me to put in a code that's being generated from an app on my phone. So it requires a second factor, a second thing to be able to log in, not just the username and password, which means that if a hacker gets access to my username and password, they're up a creek because they don't have access to my phone physically sitting in my hand to be able to get the code to help me log in, right? And that gives me the now chance to go across the board and change that password, that username and password, before they have access to do any other damage. Okay, so enforce two-factor or multi-factor authentication on all computers. Okay, establish consistent user logins. So this is really important. Not everybody needs access to everything. Generally your staff doesn't need administrative level access to be able to install and uninstall programs and those kinds of things. Give them only access to the things that they need, and only give them access during the times they need. So if you have hours of operation from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., or if you have someone who works overnights, well, their user profiles probably shouldn't allow them to log in during the day. And again, this is about reasonability. So I know that that may sound crazy, but the reality is that you should have user login policies that work for your business. But those can be time-based, and they can also be access level based, so that you give people the right access at the right time and in the right locations, right? So you can say, if somebody tries to log in with this computer in Azerbaijan, well, I think that's a problem. So we should probably not allow that, right? It's common sense, but you just need to know that that exists as an option so that you can make that happen. Next up, encrypt hard drives at rest. This is really simple. The links on your screen will be in the PDF, and they give you instructions for being able to do that. This is available on Windows 10 and beyond, and Mac OS X has it built in through File Vault. Windows 10 does not have it available in Home Edition for some reason, so you need to have at least a business level version, some kind of professional business level version of Windows 10, but then it's built in with BitLocker. Phishing training. You need to be able to train all of your employees on phishing attacks. As I said earlier, phishing attacks are when somebody comes to you and tries to get information out of you so they can then use that to infiltrate your system in some way, shape, or form. It could be as simple as calling you and saying, "Hi, I'm your bank, and I see that you reset your PIN. What was your prior PIN?" And then you give your prior PIN because you think it's your bank, and then they go walk over to an ATM. They've already scanned your ATM card, so now they have your magnetic strip code. They walk up to the ATM, put in a dummy strip, and type in your PIN, and they have access to your account, right? That's a phishing attack. Or someone calls up and says, "Hi, we're Google, and we noticed there was something wrong with your Gmail account. What's your password so we can access it and help you out?" And then they take your password, your email address and password, log into your system, put in a whole bunch of password reset requests with your bank accounts and your other accounts, get those passwords reset, lock you out of your systems, and then go on with their money-making scheme. Okay, there are really traditional ones like, "Hey, I'm a Nigerian prince and I'm stuck in Nigeria with $1 million, and I will send you a wire for $300,000 if you let me move that money between," all that nonsense, right? So the reality is, though, is that they would not do those kinds of phishing schemes if they were not successful many times. Okay, so you need to train your employees that if they see email coming across the system that is asking them for access to the computers, in this case computer systems, passwords and so forth, but this works in the same way with email. I'll talk about that in a bit. You need to be doing phishing training for all employees, and it's on a regular basis. It's not something you can just tell them once and hope they remember. You need to keep reinforcing it. Okay, mobile. Mobile's a big topic, and I just want to brush over a couple things. One, use a trusted VPN on all devices when you are outside your own company firewall. Okay, if you're at the public cafe, the Wi-Fi, using the Wi-Fi on a public cafe, you go to Starbucks, you go to a local coffee shop, you must use a VPN on all devices. Okay, a VPN is a virtual private network. It must be a trusted VPN, meaning that it needs to be one that you trust, that isn't transiting your data and using it in some way, shape, or form, or capturing it. The one I use is called TunnelBear. It's not the fastest of the VPNs, but it does what I need it to do. So I really like tunnel bear. If I'm at I travel a lot for work, so I'm always in a cafe trying to catch up on some work between seminars or workshops or meeting with clients. And it goes on my phone, it goes on my laptop. I turn them both on, and now Starbucks or whoever else is sitting in the cafe doesn't see my traffic, doesn't see the content that's transiting over my connection to the internet. Next up for data integrity is having a device and security screen lock policy. So this is really important. You need to make sure that when someone has a phone or a tablet, that their screens and the device lock if someone attempts to access it and it's not you or your staff member. Okay, just very simple, but you need to make sure that those things lock. And even on most of the modern smartphones today, if you try the screen lock too many times, it then says, okay, by the way, after 5 times, I'm wiping out this device. I'm gonna delete everything on it and put it back to factory reset, which is what you want it to do, because obviously, if you get your password wrong 5 times and it's not you, then you want to stop that person from being able to walk away and then further try to crack the device. And then we have just a short, I'm going to do a very, very brief discussion on BYOD. So BYOD, COBO, COPE, and CYOD are various types of policies that you can implement for devices, mobile devices in your company. So let me just go over them. BYOD means bring your own device, and it means that if I have an iPhone or an Android phone, I can bring that to the company and they'll connect it to the network. Then is COBO, which is company owned, business only, meaning that you can only use this issued device on the network for company purposes. COPE is corporate owned, personally enabled, meaning that the company will then give you the ability to take a device that you own and then connecting to certain services on the corporate network or say email for purposes of transacting business. And then CYOD, which is choose your own device. And that means the company, you as the business, will then provide an approved list of devices. Only these devices are allowed onto the network, but you can bring that device and we will connect you to email and calendar and so on and so forth. Okay, so it's the most latitude. But you want to really decide on which one of these is the appropriate for your business so that you can then have a consistent policy with everyone, and that way everybody is as secure as you need to be with them. Okay, let's talk about email just very briefly. Email is, from a privacy perspective, email is not file storage, and it's not project management. You don't know how many times email has been the perpetrator of a huge amount of security breaches. In my experience, people call me all the time about the fact that they have lost something that was resident in their email. Your email is not a file storage solution. It's not someplace where you should be keeping files and saying to me, oh, Ray, let me look at, I know I sent it to you 6 months ago. Let me go find that file in my email. That should be in a file storage solution like Dropbox or Google Drive or OneDrive, wherever you keep your corporate documents. You should keep that information there. And it's not project management. It shouldn't be, oh, you know what? I don't know what happened with regard to that case or file or project that we were working on. Let me look at the email chain to figure it out. The reality is there are a number of different problems with this. This is from a legal perspective. If you know anything about e-discovery or electronic discovery, your email is a huge problem from that perspective. But email is innately insecure. Let me say that again. Email is insecure. It is just like sending a fax. It's like me stepping out of my office and talking to somebody on the street. Your email is transited in an insecure environment. Anyone can pick up that information and garner that information. So email should not be something that you go around just willy-nilly keeping in a huge database over the course of years and years and years. Okay, delete email you no longer need, and keep a policy that gets rid of email over time. Okay. Data integrity. I don't have a lot of time for this, but just take down note. You should make sure that your email has SPF, DKIM, or both under DMARC, because DMARC does both policies, or DMARC, okay? And so these are ways in which you can then confirm that when you send email back and forth between others, they are the people who you're sending it. So you can stop spoofing and other kinds of integrity issues when you're transiting email back and forth with others. And then security. You can enable spam and phishing protections at the email administration level. I know that G Suite does it. I'm guessing that Microsoft Office 365 does as well. So just make sure that you are enabling those at the administration level. Do not leave spam and phishing to the end user, because that will just create problems. Okay, I am not going to cover the tools here. These will be available in a PDF that I will link to in the archive. I will give it to Tracy for you to be able to access, and I will turn it over to Tracy for Q&A.
Okay. Thanks, Ray. We don't have any questions quite yet, so I'm going to go ahead and close out the webinar. If you have any questions, please go ahead and type those into the question window as I'm closing out the webinar, and Ray will answer them after. Thank you all for participating today. Today's webinar was recorded and it'll be posted on the Virginia SBDC website under live webinars and recordings. Tomorrow you'll be receiving a follow-up email on this webinar, and there'll be an evaluation link in that email. Please help us to continue to improve our training by taking the time to complete the evaluation. I have also posted that in the chat window if you want to go ahead and fill that evaluation out now. Please join us for our next webinar, Facebook Advertising 101, How to Create Effective Ad Campaigns on Facebook, on August 28th. Thank you, everyone. So we do have one question, which was, could you schedule Ray for a follow-up to go over tools? That was the most important part for me. So, you know, Ray and I will certainly have a conversation about whether that's a whole webinar, where we go from there on that. And that is all the questions that we have. So thank you for that question. It's good feedback. Thank you for everyone for participating today.